Amazing transformation. Single dad helps homeless man, then discovers he's a millionaire's father. Jack pulled into the driveway of his old, weary house as the last traces of daylight vanished behind icy clouds. The biting cold seeped through the walls, mingling with the remnants of earlier days filled with warmth and hope. Just a year ago, he had a family. Now he was a single dad struggling to make ends meet. His aching hands were testaments to the hours spent at the garage, repairing cars, while counting every penny just to keep food on the table for Lily. He got out of his truck, the gravel crunching underfoot, louder than the ticking clock of his life. Shivering, he glanced at the darkening street, then at the doorway where a familiar figure huddled beneath a threadbare blanket. Tom. Jack's heart twisted. The day he first offered Tom a plate of food, something shifted inside him. Who was the real judge of worth? He had sworn to his father he'd always lend a hand to those in need. But now his neighbors' disapproving gazes clung to him like a second skin. Did he truly have the right to help when he was teetering on the edge himself? Before he could ponder much further, he turned back to Tom's frail frame, an unexpected weight on his chest. "Hey, Tom, you hungry?" The words left him like a release, but the doubt lingered, gnawing at him. What was he risking by inviting someone the town deemed beneath them to share his home? The warmth of his kitchen contrasted sharply with the tension in his mind. Jack heard his father's voice echo, "Help those who can't help themselves." Yet, blending his family's values with suspicion felt monumentally reckless. As they sat across from each other at the small table, the steam rising from their simple meal seemed to thaw the chill that crept inside Jack's bones. Their conversation flickered through light-hearted stories, the kind with laughter and heavy doses of regret. Each chuckle a temporary balm for Jack's inner turmoil. He listened to Tom recount a life woven with dreams, mirroring Jack's own. Lily's laughter had become the sanctuary Tom craved for the family he lost. Jack felt a twinge of guilt. He was almost enjoying this too much. His heart sank as he recalled the judgment from the diner last week, a cold stare here, a whisper there. Pressured by the community's whispered contempt, Jack felt utterly exposed, like he was caring for a reflection of his deepest fears. Would they ever see Tom as a man deserving respect, and not just the rags of misfortune? He wrestled with this thought as he cleaned up after dinner, Tom's quiet gratitude hanging like heavy winter air around them. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. That night, as Jack tucked Lily into bed, doubt clung to him like an unwanted guest. What kind of father was he? Was he dragging her down with him? The memory of her mother's departure stung like a fresh wound, a constant reminder of his failures. Was helping Tom worth the scrutiny? And what if Tom were really just a lost cause? The weight of his frustration exploded as he paced the living room, torn between hope and despair. That was when the fateful knock echoed through the quiet house, a stranger with an anxious look that turned Jack's world upside down. The man revealed Tom's true identity. Jack's mind raced. This wasn't merely a matter of loyalty or respect anymore. It was a crisis of integrity that could alter both their lives. Could he embrace this unexpected twist of fate, or would he cave to the overwhelming judgment of those around him? Each option felt like a heavier burden, making Jack's heart race with uncertainty. As the man left, a letter slipped from his hand, a chance to reach Tom's son, an unsteady bridge to a world away from his humble existence. The culmination of pressure wrapped Jack tighter, his breath quickening as everything he knew hung precariously, right there in that moment. What future awaited him now? Jack's heart raced with an electric confusion as he stared at the letter that lay like an anchor on the kitchen table. The words scrawled across the page swirled in his mind, taunting and illuminating. He could scarcely wrap his head around the revelation. Tom was not just a man down on his luck. He was the father of a millionaire, a fact that could shatter the very foundations of Jack's already precarious existence. The implications loomed over him, a specter of possibility shadowing his thoughts. Could reaching out to Tom's son truly change their fortunes? Or did that path lead to deeper scrutiny and condemnation? His instincts whispered caution, but the part of him that clung to hope and ambition clamored for exploration. What if this was the opportunity he had long yearned for, a means to carve out a better life for his daughter, a chance at redemption? Wrestling with the gnawing anxiety, Jack felt a flicker of determination surge within him. He had never been one to shy away from a challenge. Yet, facing the town's judgment felt daunting, an uphill battle against a chorus of skepticism. Perhaps this was not just about financial salvation. It was a test of his character. "What do I even say?" he muttered to himself, pacing the kitchen, as the echoes of doubt clashed with the inspiration that burgeoned. The faint sound of Lily's breath from her room drew him back momentarily, reminding him of his profound responsibility. Every decision rippled through her life. He must set an example. Grabbing a pen, Jack jotted down a few words, reflecting on his own vulnerabilities, expressing empathy for Tom's situation. He envisioned reaching out to the millionaire's son. It was more than a transactional gesture. It was a chance to bridge the chasm between privilege and struggle. Yet, what if he laid bare his own pressing circumstances and was met with disdain? The thought made his stomach twist uncomfortably. After several drafts, he finally settled on a message that felt honest, a raw reflection of his journey as a father and a man. Each stroke of his pen transformed the page into an olive branch, a commitment to work together rather than apart. It was a step of faith, terrifying yet invigorating. As he sealed the envelope, a sudden impulse washed over him. He needed to talk to Tom. After all, Tom's experience and wisdom could help guide him through the complexities ahead. Could they become allies in an unpredictable landscape? Jack worried about the gossip that would erupt from this alliance. He could already hear the whispers swirling like a storm. But he couldn't let fear dictate his actions. The following morning, he found Tom sitting on the same damp steps where they had shared meals and laughter. The sunlight barely reached them, illuminating the care etched on Tom's features. Jack took a deep breath, preparing to share his own vulnerability. "Tom, I received something last night that made me think. We should talk. About your son, about us." Jack's heart pounded as he spoke, each word feeling like it was laden with risk. Tom's brow furrowed, uncertainty flashing across his face. "About what, Jack? What's going on?" In that moment, Jack realized the conversation would not merely be about money or opportunity. It would navigate the murky waters of trust, self-worth, and what true loyalty meant in a world often quick to judge. He wasn't just reaching out for help, he was carving out a collaborative path toward their shared futures. As they sat together, Jack could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him. The rhythm of their breaths synchronized, fusing into a moment that felt markedly transformative. Could they redefine expectations and confront judgment head-on? Every second felt monumental, like standing on the cusp of a breakthrough or a collapse. Just as Jack began to share the contents of the letter, a couple of locals strode by, their eyes flicking suspiciously toward them. The harshness of their gazes seemed to sharpen the tension in the air, a reminder of the judgment lurking just beneath the surface. The stakes had never felt higher. "What if they see us talking like this?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jack squared his shoulders, steeling himself against the doubt that tugged at him. "That's the point. We're going to show them something new." As the churning clouds in the sky mirrored his inner turmoil, Jack felt an undeniable resolve take root within him. The moment for change was now, even if it felt perilous. He took a step forward, ready to embrace the challenge ahead. But just as hope surged, a distant sound shattered the moment. A shrill siren pierced through the thick air. Jack's pulse quickened. What had he unwittingly invited into their lives? The uncertainty loomed, casting a veil of tension as he braced for the unfolding consequences. What were the ramifications of standing against judgment? Jack's heart thudded heavily as he faced the coming storm. Yet within it, he felt a glimmer of hope. Each decision would carve the path forward, but at what cost? Jack's thoughts spiraled around the implications of the siren's wail, each blast reverberating through the very marrow of his bones. The world outside his introspection seemed to swell with potential chaos, where the choice to forge a connection with Tom could yield unforeseen consequences. "What if they come for us?" he whispered under his breath, a tight coil of anxiety constricting his lungs. Tom shifted nervously, mirroring Jack's unease. Each man weighed the unspoken risk of their meeting. What had begun as a quest for mutual understanding now hovered perilously close to danger, positioning them on the unsteady edge between opportunity and destruction. "Jack, maybe we shouldn't," Tom began, but Jack interrupted, summoning strength from the reserves of hope within him. "No, we can't turn back now," he asserted, igniting the fire of resolve that colored his cheeks with the latent warmth of potential progress. "This is our moment. The people who might judge us have to see that we won't hide. We'll face them head on." Tom's uncertain expression softened, a flicker of respect sparking between them. Jack's staunch commitment became a lifeline of motivation. With a newfound clarity, he delved deeper into his purpose. This encounter was not solely about wealth or the power dynamics of class. It was a defining moment to confront their pasts and the prejudice that threatens to eclipse their futures. "I wrote a letter to your son," Jack confessed, the words spilling from him like water breaking through a dam. "I asked for a chance for us to meet, to show him that family isn't strictly about blood, but about who stands by each other in difficult times." Tom's eyes widened with surprise, a mix of admiration and trepidation swirling in his gaze. "You did what? What do you expect from him?" "I expect him to see us," Jack replied, his voice steadying as he embraced the weight of his decisions. "To understand that we are more than what society might dictate. We have stories, struggles, and yes, hopes. We deserve a shot." As they spoke, the sirens faded into the background, their urgency giving way to an invigorating sense of purpose. Jack felt something shift within him, a shift toward action rather than reaction. He resolved that they would not live as peripheral figures in their own lives, dictated by the whims of others. "Let's go together," Tom offered, his voice firm now, no longer wavering. They were united, not simply as men bearing the brunt of misfortune, but as allies committed to a shared future. With the sun rising higher, illuminating the worn pavement before them, they began walking toward the heart of the town, ready to confront the impending uncertainty. Each step felt like a silent declaration of defiance against the judgments that had so long defined their lives. Jack felt a creeping fear entwined with hope. This walk could change everything. The perspective shift was challenging, likely to spark a war within the community. They would meet the skepticism head-on, and in doing so, create space for dialogue. He envisioned the reactions, the whispers behind hands. But like a storm chaser facing tornado winds, he craved the wild thrill of the unexpected. As they passed familiar faces, Jack's pulse quickened. Yet within him burned a fierce desire to reclaim his narrative, to reshape how both he and Tom would be viewed, not as outcasts, but as men aspiring for better futures. Do you remember when we used to dream, Tom? Jack suddenly reflected, reminiscing about their past conversations filled with laughter and unbound potential. It's time we start dreaming again. Tom nodded, and for the first time, a smile crept onto his face, bright, hesitant, but clear of the weight that had burdened them both. The energy in their partnership began to resonate, reverberating from the soul's core. But just as Jack turned to share his renewed hope, a confrontation loomed ahead. A small group of townsfolk, eyes wide with suspicion, stood there, arms crossed like sentinels blocking their path. They had not anticipated an audience quite so immediate or glaring. Here, on this unyielding battlefield, Jack's breath caught. Would recognition of their existence be met with understanding, or was an adversarial reckoning about to unveil itself? The decisive weight of this moment settled in. Was he prepared for the collision? As he locked eyes with Tom, the question lingered, unfurling like a flag on a wretched battlefield. What would they choose to say? What would they decide to fight for together, amidst those who had plotted their demises in whispered tongues? The answers awaited just a breath away, poised on the precipice of transformation. Jack's heart thundered in his chest as he stood before the group, their expressions a tapestry woven with suspicion, curiosity, and vague contempt. He felt the oppressive weight of their stares, 1,000 judgments hidden behind their crossed arms, each one sharp enough to slice through the fragile layer of his newfound resolve. "Jack," Tom whispered, his voice taut with apprehension. "What now?" In that instant, Jack realized that this was a pivotal moment not just for him, but for Tom as well. This was their first test, a litmus of sorts, to determine if their daring step into the light would be met with acceptance or disdain. Summoning every ounce of courage, he took a small step forward, his voice steady but laced with the anxiety of untested bravery. "This doesn't have to be contentious," he said, searching each face in the crowd for a flicker of comprehension. "We're here together, not as enemies, but as people wanting to change how things are. We're tired of hiding, and it's time you see us for who we are." A murmur rippled through the group, skepticism dancing within their glances. Jack's pulse quickened as he realized this was not merely about societal perception, this was about confronting his own fears and doubts. Would he be strong enough to see this through? One woman stepped forward, her brow furrowed. "And what do you expect us to do? Just accept that you're suddenly part of our community? You think we owe you something? You've made your choices, now you want us to forget them?" Her words hung in the air, taunting him as if they were tainted by generations of mistrust. Jack's mind raced. Why was he willing to go so far, not just for himself, but for Tom? It was not an obligation, it was a connection forged through shared pain and aspirations. "I don't expect anything," Jack responded, trying to maintain a calm exterior. "I'd like the chance to earn your respect, to show you that we're not asking for charity. We want to contribute. We want to be part of the dialogue." Tom nodded, taking a step closer, mirroring Jack's conviction. "We want to stand with you, not above or below. Let's talk about what that could look like. Let's break down this wall together." Jack could feel the shift in energy, unease mingled with curiosity. The crowd's sharp breaths indicated they were considering his words. Still, doubt gnawed at him relentlessly. Would they truly listen? Would he falter under the sharp gaze of criticism? In the past, Jack often deflected conflict, retreating into his shell when pressures mounted. But there was something different today, a palpable urge to confront his instinct to withdraw. This was his evolution. He could not back down now. "Look," he pressed, glancing into the eyes of familiar faces, faces with whose histories he was entwined. "I've felt the burdens of silence and longing for acceptance. I know what it's like to be judged for choices that don't define you, but I'm here to say that we all have the power to change how we see each other." A murmur built, discordant notes not yet forming a melody. Yet Jack felt emboldened by the flickers of realization dancing within the crowd's expressions. There were eager minds behind the cautious eyes. He could sense it. A burly man in the back stepped forward. "And what makes you think we're ready to change? What's in it for us?" Jack had been preparing for this. It was the right question. This wasn't merely about him or even about Tom. It was about fostering a space for dialogue, an opportunity that could lead to mutual growth. "Everything," he replied, his voice finding a stronger cadence. "Understanding is the first step. When we break down our defenses, we gain so much more than pride. We learn, we grow. We allow each other the chance to be fully human." He paused, feeling the collective gaze bridge the chasm between them. This place, this community, it could reflect who we want to be, together. Who's willing to step forward and join the conversation? Tom reached out, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. The gesture conveyed solidarity and determination, a mutual agreement that they would face this challenge as one. As Jack stood under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he grasped the uncertainty that lingered, the tantalizing taste of change, laced with the fear of rejection. Would this be the moment where he would guide others toward understanding? Or would he retreat into the shadows once more? The whispers began to rise, like a tide threatening to break. Jack could sense the reckoning approaching. He needed to reveal a deeper truth about himself, something they hadn't anticipated. He took a deep breath, preparing to unveil the hidden cards he had left unplayed, tinged with implications that could shift everything he thought he knew. "What you don't know," he began, each word punctuated with the gravity of his revelation, ready to turn the tide of fate once and for all. "That I'm not who you think I am." Jack's voice trembled, the weight of unspoken truths pressing down on him like a leaden cloak. The crowd leaned in, their curiosity piqued, yet skepticism lingered in the air like mist before dawn. "I've spent too long running from my past," Jack continued, glancing at Tom for a swift moment of reassurance. "But the choices I've made don't define my worth or who I can be. I'm a father. My son deserves a better example of courage and integrity." The admission hung over them, delicate yet charged. Jack had always struggled with the responsibilities of fatherhood, especially in the shadow of his past mistakes. Would showing vulnerability invite judgment or forge a connection? The woman who had challenged him earlier remained silent, her brow still creased. Jack could feel her skepticism, a reflection of his own doubts emanating from her steadfast demeanor. "I've learned that strength isn't about hiding our fears, but confronting them," he pressed on, his voice gaining momentum. "I want to step into this community as a participant, not a pariah. And if I can do this while juggling the demands of being a single dad, why can't we all step outside our comfort zones?" Tom's grip on his shoulder tightened. It was a gesture of camaraderie, but it also sent an electric thrill through Jack. Could he really be the catalyst for change? "Maybe some of you might think I'm just here to plead for sympathy," he said, his honesty raw and unfiltered. "But I stand before you not as a broken man seeking redemption, but as someone who believes deeply in transformation. Just as I embark on this journey for my son, I hope to inspire others in this community to embrace their challenges." As Jack scanned the audience, he saw eyes soften, faces where hardness had once reigned flicker with intrigue. There were glimmers of recognition in some, the shared empathy that comes between individuals entwined by hardship. Let's face it, our stories might differ, but our battles are often the same. Whether a single dad or a member of the community facing difficulties, we have an opportunity to shift our perceptions together. Whenever one of us is uplifted, we uplift all, he said, drawing upon the strength of his personal experiences. The burly man stepped in again, aptly reflecting the tension still thick among them. Why should we believe you? What's the proof you're ready to change? A surge of determination welled within Jack. Because the man standing beside me, Tom, has seen my journey, my struggles, and my progress. You can choose to verify what I tell you. Ask around, watch me act. Let my actions speak for the changes I want to embody. The murmurs grew louder, rippling through the crowd, a blend of skepticism and curiosity. For the first time since stepping into the circle, Jack dared to entertain a glimmer of hope, that perhaps his honesty was inciting reflection rather than resignation. Let's dialogue, not debate, he urged, his voice surging with newfound clarity. I'm here to hear your stories, your truths. I want to understand your fears and hopes alongside mine. Something shifted within him. Jack started to envision far more than just pushing past an old narrative. There was greatness in connection, in collaboration. The crowd was more than a singular entity. They were a web of experiences, ready to be woven into something greater. Suddenly, the realization struck him. His journey was not just about advocating for himself, but for those who felt voiceless as he once had. Together, we can redefine what it means to belong, Jack finally declared, emboldened by the very realization of his potential. Not just for one another, but for our families, friends, and this community as a whole. He felt the words resonate. There was something transformative buzzing in the air as individuals began stepping forward, tentative yet energized by his call to action. Jack's heart raced, teetering on the precipice of collective change. But within that rush of hope lay a shadow of apprehension. Just as victory felt within grasp, he couldn't shake the looming question. Would he truly be able to uphold his new commitments, or would old habits pull him back into the darkness? The atmosphere shifted, conversations ignited, and amidst the newfound energy, Jack felt a pivotal truth unfurling within him. This could either be the dawn of his redemption or the dusk of yet another failed attempt. And as Tom steadied his gaze on Jack, the next flash of realization hit him. Was there more to his father's past than anyone had hoped? Dared to uncover, and could it change everything he thought he knew? As the discussions sparked within the crowd, Jack felt himself drifting along the currents of their emotions, grappling with the clarity of his newfound purpose. The atmosphere shimmered with an energy he hadn't felt in years, a tantalizing blend of hope and uncertainty swirling around him. Yet with every voice that joined him, Jack felt an unsettling awareness of the responsibility he was beginning to shoulder. He glanced at Tom, who remained steadfast beside him. Tom's unwavering support anchored Jack amidst the internal tempest. But the question nagged. What if he faltered? What if his past resurfaced once more, forcing him back into the shadows he so desperately wished to escape? As anticipation filled the air, a tall man in the back made his way toward the front, his shoes scuffing against the pavement. The crowd parted reluctantly, holding their breaths. Jack felt his heart rate spike. The man's face was familiar, a specter from his past who resurfaced unexpectedly. Bobby, a former acquaintance from his darker days. Jack's stomach churned. "What do you want, Bobby?" Jack asked, forcing steadiness into his voice, masking the tremor of fear. "I thought you were done with all of this." Bobby smirked, leaning against the railing, crossing his arms. "I heard your little speech, Jack. You really think a few heartfelt words can change anything? You're a joke." The insult stung far deeper than Jack wanted to admit. Beneath Bobby's cruel veneer lurked shadows of all Jack's former insecurities and failures, like a mirror reflecting back the man he was desperately trying to distance himself from. "I'm not here for theatrics." Jack took a deep breath, steadying his resolve. "I'm trying to be better for my son, for myself." "Better," Bobby interrupted, his voice dripping with mockery.
You think being a baby dad earns you points? You're still the same coward who couldn't face his own issues. You just want to look good to these people. Jack felt the urge to lash out, old habits whispering temptations of violent defiance. But he knew that wasn't the answer. You don't get it, he replied, fighting to keep his tone even. I'm not doing this for applause. I'm doing this to make a change, and you can't take that away from me. Bobby's eyes narrowed, brimming with disdain. Oh, but I can. You think you can rewrite your story? The world doesn't care about second chances. The venom in Bobby's words was palpable. Success or failure, it's just waiting to swallow you whole again. The crowd had gripped tightly to Bobby's every word, cautious and doubtful. Jack locked eyes with Tom, whose facade of courage seemed to crack under the weight of the confrontation. He felt an urgency rising in him, a choice to make. Was he going to back down in the face of old fears, or would he stand firm against them? With an unexpected clarity, Jack realized his past no longer
had authority over him. It was time to prove that transformation was not a dream, but an active choice. Listen, Bobby, he said slowly, emphasizing his words. You may think you're right, but I know I have the power to impact at least one life, my son's, and that's worth fighting for. His renewed confidence resonated with some in the crowd, and he observed the softened expressions and nods of agreement forming along the edges. The tide was shifting, if only slightly. But Bobby wasn't done. What about your father? You think he was proud of you? The world is not going to let you hide from your legacy. Jack recoiled, his heart racing, as Bobby's words unwittingly pried open wounds he had long tried to seal. Could there be truth in them, a hidden link to all this uncertainty? With each pulse of uncertainty, he felt the need to dig deeper. Maybe it's time to confront that legacy, Jack muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The notion that perhaps his father's shadow was the real enemy lurking behind the facade of his doubts felt both daunting and liberating. With each pulse of uncertainty, he felt the need to dig deeper. Maybe it's time to confront that legacy, Jack muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The notion that perhaps his father's shadow was the real enemy lurking behind the facade of his doubts felt both daunting and liberating. Would facing this truth propel him further on his path or hinder his progress? Bobby smirked, sensing the fracturing resolve in Jack. I can't wait to see how this plays out. The crowd was caught in the balance, a collective inhalation of tension hanging in the air. Jack knew he couldn't let the moment slip away. Questions battered at his mind, insistently demanding answers. His father's specter loomed, but amidst the clash of his past and present, Jack realized something powerful. Knowing oneself meant unraveling all truths, not just the comfortable ones. With determination igniting deep within him, Jack declared, I will find my father, and I won't shy away from the truth anymore. This journey isn't just about me. It's about understanding the paths that brought us here. As Bobby's laughter echoed ominously, Jack was left with a terrifying yet exhilarating realization. He was stepping into an uncharted territory riddled with potential revelations that could reshape his entire existence. The question remained, what would he uncover about his father that could either liberate him or bind him further in the chains of his past? As the crowd dissipated, Jack remained rooted to the spot, his heart hammering like a war drum in his chest. Each glance at Bobby's retreating figure felt like unearthing a relic from the past, awash with a mix of anger and fear. The weight of the confrontation hung thick in the air, caging him in his thoughts. He couldn't shake the rawness of Bobby's words, the way they burrowed deep under his skin, igniting a storm within him.
Tom approached, the concern etched on his features evident. "You okay?" he asked, words laced with a hesitation that made Jack question their friendship's sturdiness in this moment. Jack opened his mouth to respond, but the rush of conflicting emotions scrambled his thoughts. "Not really," he finally admitted, surprising himself.
The honesty. For so long, he'd tried to fill the cracks in his facade with bravado, yet now the cracks widened in the wake of Bobby's taunts. Each tremor, echoing unmistakably, felt like a call to confront something much larger than himself. "Listen, you've got a lot to offer," Tom urged, attempting to coach Jack back into a stronger stance. "You were inspiring out there. Don't let him get to you." Jack's gaze fell as he wrestled with the gnawing demon of self-doubt. "But can I really change? What about my father? What if I'm just repeating the mistakes he made?" Tom stepped closer, bringing a grounded presence. "Your father doesn't define you, Jack. You're your own man. You've worked hard to be better." The sincerity in Tom's voice broke through some of Jack's tumultuous thoughts. "Maybe," Jack replied slowly, "but the idea of confronting his legacy terrifies me. What if I find out I'm just like him, or worse, that I can't face him at all?" The truth was that Jack had avoided the conversation about his father for too long. Every time the topic arose, his absence, his failures, it made Jack feel small, like a boy haunted by the shadows of a man he never truly knew. Yet the moment had come when he could no longer dismiss it. The thought that Bobby's cruel laughter might hold a kernel of truth brewed into a simmering resolve within him. "I need to do this," Jack muttered, barely recognizing the resolution building inside him. "Facing my father might be the closure or the reckoning I need." As they walked away from the dissipation of voices and energy, an inkling of courage coaxed Jack forward. He suddenly envisioned a future where not just his son, but he himself could liberate themselves from past shackles. The weeks ahead loomed large with uncertainty, each day a stepping stone into the realm of the unknown. It was daunting, yet invigorating. The fear toward a confrontation with his father felt almost like facing a malevolent specter, a ghost that could either chain him further or break the binds entirely. Jack recalibrated his focus, filtering everything through the lens of accountability. "What if I documented this journey?" he pondered aloud to Tom. "It might help me process it. And if I can struggle openly with my story, maybe that will help others." Tom nodded, a spark of excitement lighting his eyes. "That's a great idea. You'll inspire people, not just as a father, but as someone battling his past. But are you ready to dive so deep?" Jack nodded, feeling clarity settle within him. "I have to be. This isn't just about the confrontation. It's about owning my life. I have to face my fears if I ever hope to keep my son from the same mistakes." The journey ahead was fraught with unanswered questions and messy truths, but Jack envisioned stepping onto this path, confronting his father, peeling back the layers of pain, and transforming it into purpose. He and Tom made plans to help him find his father. Jack's thoughts turned to another looming challenge, Bobby. That encounter had fueled something more profound, a need for reckoning with enemies old and new. The whispers of self-doubt faded against the backdrop of impending discovery. But now a persistent question lingered. Would confronting his father yield insights that set him free, or would it unravel the newfound strength he had only begun to embrace? Jack was determined to leap into the fray and unearth the truth, for his son and ultimately for himself. It was time to confront the shadows, bravely stepping into a future still unwritten. Little did he know, the next revelation would hit harder than he could ever imagine. Jack's mind spun in a tumultuous dance, caught between excitement and trepidation. The plans he made with Tom took shape, mapping out the terrain of an inner landscape he had spent years trying to ignore. There was something electric about documenting his journey, a chance to bring painful truths into the light, each step a testament to his determination to break the cycle. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, Jack found solace in writing. The words poured out like a cleansing rain, helping him sift through the clutter of emotion that once paralyzed him. He spoke not just about the confrontation with his father, but about the emotions that had shaped him. The profound hurt of betrayal, the nagging fear of repeating his father's missteps. With each entry, he set himself free, letting go of the burdens he had unjustly carried for so long. However, shadows loomed large. Each moment of clarity was often punctuated by doubts. Would his father even be willing to talk? The trepidation tightened around his chest like a vice. Bobby's words echoed with alarming resonance. What if he was merely setting himself up to fail? The thought of being rejected, of being told he was unworthy by the very man who had abandoned him, sent tremors of panic through his core. Go into it prepared, Tom encouraged during their weekly meetup, sipping coffee at their usual booth, a small oasis of routine amidst Jack's chaotic mental storm. You have a right to be there, to demand answers. Jack nodded, but the doubt nagged like an unwanted itch. It wasn't just about confronting his father, but confronting parts of himself he was often too afraid to face. And what if I don't like what I find? He mused aloud, worry etching into his features. What if I'm just like him? What if you're not? Tom shot back, sharper than he intended, an unusual fierceness in his voice. You're a different person, Jack. You've shown compassion where he showed none. You care about your son in ways he never cared about you. The truth pierced through the fog. Jack's inner narrative was riddled with fears, but it was also a tapestry woven with resilience. The more he reflected, the more he saw he had built a life motivated by love and understanding, a stark contrast to the empty echoes of his father's choices. Determined to move beyond his fears, Jack began plotting a course, a literal and metaphorical map of where he wanted to go. He reached out to empty spaces in his life, looking for connections that could ground him during this emotional upheaval. One afternoon, he volunteered at a local shelter that had long caught his interest, but which he had never visited. Being among those who were struggling ignited something within him, an acute awareness of his own privilege, sparking a need to show up fully for others. As he folded blankets and served meals, he caught sight of a humble man with deep lines carved into his face, a life etched visibly by hardship. They exchanged small talk, and something about the man's kindness struck Jack deeply. The discussion wandered from banal details of daily life to the serendipity of rediscovering hope in adversity. "You never know where pain leads," the man confided, his eyes gleaming with an unspoken past. "Sometimes the biggest blessing can come wrapped in the mess of your life." Jack felt a knot in his throat. Here was a stranger embodying the very wisdom he craved. In the week that followed, Jack couldn't shake the sentiment. He reflected on the man's words, blending inspiration into his writing, infusing hope into real words as he wrestled with his own truths. But the push toward confronting his father overshadowed everything, igniting a flame for confrontation and resolution. When Jack finally summoned the courage to reach out to his father, an unexpected response surprised him, an invitation to meet. The weight of the moment hung heavy. Would this be an opportunity to untangle decades of silence, or would it deepen his wounds? With his heart racing at the thought of the impending meeting, Jack's fingers hovered above the keyboard. He knew he was on the brink of a greater understanding of himself, yet the impending discovery now loomed larger than ever. Who exactly was the man he was about to confront, and what would that mean for his identity moving forward? Little did he know that the truth about his father would bring revelations that would transcend his expectations, forever altering the path he thought he was destined to tread. The day of the meeting arrived, laced with an electrifying tension that coursed through Jack's veins. He stood in front of the mirror, scrutinizing his reflection, as if a stranger stared back. A familiar dread clawed at him, but beneath that layer of fear simmered an unexpected resolve.
Today was not merely about confronting his past. It was an opportunity to assert his identity against the backdrop of vulnerability and pain. He arrived at the coffee shop where they agreed to meet, an unassuming place that his father had frequented. Each step toward the entrance felt heavy with apprehension. The air inside was thick with dialogue and the smell of fresh coffee, yet all Jack
could feel was the thundering in his chest and the clamminess of his hands. Memories of his father's absence flooded back, birthday parties without him, the silence in the house that spoke of missed calls and unmet expectations. When his father walked in, a man with a weathered face and eyes that seemed to mirror his own, Jack's breath caught in his throat. This was the man he had idolized and resented all at once. They exchanged muted greetings, the distance between them bridged only by the weight of unspoken words and unshed tears. It was astonishing how one person could hold so much power over another's life, both as a source of pain and longing. As they settled in, Jack felt a faint glimmer of hope amid his fear. This could be the turning point, the unraveling of a narrative that had shackled him for too long. He didn't want his son to sit inside the same prison of resentment. "I need to understand," Jack started, his voice trembling but steady. "Why did you leave?" His father's eyes flared momentarily, a flicker of vulnerability flashing before he composed himself. "I was young. I thought I was doing what was best for you," he replied, albeit vaguely. Jack pressed on, drawing strength from Tom's encouragement, confronting not just his father, but the shy, uncertain boy still residing within him. "And the consequences? You think abandoning us was the answer?" The retort felt charged, cathartic. Jack could feel the years of burden evaporating. They were mere words, yet they held the weight of a lifetime filled with anxiety and self-doubt. What followed was an unraveling of deeper truths, an unexpected admission that shook Jack to the core. His father disclosed an uncomfortable backstory of his life, financial struggles, wrongful turns, and a crippling sense of inadequacy that had driven him away. The man sitting across from him had not just abandoned Jack, but had himself been a casualty of life's relentless trials. The revelation sparked a flicker of empathy within Jack. He began to perceive the man he had once demonized as a composite of flaws he detested, yet shared. The realization was jarring. Perhaps he wasn't so far from this man after all. They both harbored pain, housed fears of unworthiness, and wore scars that dictated their decisions. As Jack spoke of his own challenges, a bridge began to form, sewn by mutual vulnerability, a human connection forged in honesty. The painful echoes of their past started to dissipate as Jack recognized the power of shared experience in forging emotional bonds. When it was over, Jack felt an unanticipated lightness. He had not only confronted his father, but had stepped into his own light, recognizing his capability to redefine their relationship. Maybe this would not erase years of hurt. However, it offered a thread of hope lingering in the air. Perhaps forgiveness could be an evolving process. Walking away from that meeting, Jack found himself pondering a profound question. Beyond understanding who his father was, he was left to contemplate who he wanted to be moving forward. The remnants of fear began to fade as he clutched the beginnings of renewal tightly, conceiving a new path toward potential, purpose, and a more authentic self. Yet, deep in his mind lingered a curiosity. What would happen next if he could build a bridge not just to heal his past, but to forge a new beginning for his son, too? What were the implications of that connection for himself and the family he had created? He could feel the questions swelling within him like a tide. The answers were intricately woven into the narrative of his life, a narrative waiting to unfold. Little did Jack know that the next chapter would reveal a hidden legacy, linking him to realities far beyond his anticipation. Jack stood at the precipice of transformation, a swirl of emotions coursing through him, newly forged clarity guiding his steps.
The coffee shop meeting had served as a launching pad, unveiling vulnerabilities he had long kept hidden. The truth about his father's struggles and the wounds they shared had not only shifted their relationship, but ignited a spark within Jack. A realization that change was not just possible, but within reach. A few weeks passed, marked by Jack's commitment to growth and understanding. He poured his newfound insights into his writing, weaving a narrative of redemption and hope. His online chronicles of fatherhood, resilience, and the journey to reconcile with his past began to resonate. His audience grew steadily, a community bound by shared stories, each comment a thread binding lives together. The impact of his vulnerability transcended mere words. It became a movement toward collective healing, offering solace to others grappling with their demons. With every penned reflection, Jack felt a profound weight lifting. He had taken his father's legacy and turned it inside out, reframing it as a complex but navigable path toward self-discovery. Jack no longer saw himself as a byproduct of pain. He was a beacon of strength, a dedicated father fiercely fighting for his son's better future. In this process, he had overcome not only the burden of his father's choices, but transformed that burden into fuel for his ambitions. One afternoon, an unexpected email arrived. The message was from Tom's son, expressing a desire to meet. The complexities unfolded deeper when Jack learned that Tom's son, now a young man navigating the world of privilege, had been following Jack's journey online, curious to understand the man who had offered kindness to his father. Jack's heart raced. This invitation was more than just a meeting. It was a full circle moment, a chance to demonstrate the connection between compassion and understanding across societal divides. On the day of their meeting, anticipation buzzed in the air. Jack arrived at a cafe chosen by Tom's son, his palms sweating with the prospect of constructive dialogue. This wouldn't just be a conversation about addressing the past. It was an opportunity to cultivate a partnership that could directly impact the community both men belonged to. Minutes passed like hours, and as the door opened, Jack was greeted by a tall young man, confidently extending his hand. "Jack, right?" Tom's son said, his warm smile anthropomorphizing the utopia of connection both had long yearned for. They engaged in conversation that morning, not as strangers, but as kindred spirits, tethered by their respective journeys, a dialogue across polar sides of life's harsh sprawl. As they shared stories, Tom's son detailing the struggles of privilege and growing up as the child of a once homeless man, Jack articulating his fears about repeating the cycle of neglect, something beautiful began to materialize. They discovered shared vulnerabilities and the potential for collaboration that could reshape not only their paths, but the perceptions embedded within their community. Months rolled by, marked by initiatives that blossomed from the unlikely partnership. They began organizing workshops aimed at fostering connections between those facing hardships and those in positions of privilege, echoing the very essence of their own improbable friendship. Jack's confidence surged as his competence flourished, transforming him from a struggling single dad into a community pillar, advocating for compassion and empowerment. The day of their first workshop arrived, pulsating with energy and potential. Jack stood before a crowded room, butterflies fluttering in his stomach, yet fortified by the unwavering conviction that each person had a meaningful story to tell. When he spoke, the echoes of his struggle intertwined with the hopes of those present, carving a narrative of resilience that resonated through generations. "I once feared being judged for my past," Jack declared, grounding himself in the moment. "But now I embrace it as a part of my journey that has led me here. We can redefine our paths, not in isolation, but together. Each voice adds strength to the narrative of change." The audience leaned in, eyes sparkled with empathy, breaths held at the precipice of true understanding. Jack had created a space for dialogue, a bridge between backgrounds that shattered preconceived notions and united diverse experiences. What began as personal turmoil had morphed into a coalition for growth, one built on compassion and the willingness of individuals to confront their biases. Weeks later, as he sat at home reflecting on the profound impact of the workshops, Jack recognized that he was no longer the man burdened by old legacies. He had forged a new identity, rooted not in fear, but in courage. Every struggle he transformed into triumph redefined his relationship not just with his father, but with himself. He savored the hard-earned victories and cherished the profound connections formed through honest conversation. The moment crystallized into palpable clarity. Jack had written a new story, one where he was not just a survivor navigating the chaos of fatherhood, but a catalyst for positive change. He had achieved recognition within his community, establishing himself as a trusted leader, unafraid to confront the uncomfortable truths that lay at the heart of human connection. As Jack sat with Lily at the kitchen table, he watched
her diligently sketch her dreams, unfurling before her a world filled with possibilities. The flickers of vulnerability and confidence danced around them like fireflies in the night. Jack leaned closer to her. Always remember, sweetheart, our greatest achievements come from facing adversity. And there, in the shared silence filled with unspoken understanding, both father and daughter basked in the significance of their transformative journeys. This was Jack's final breakthrough, a potent reminder that although life had thrown curveballs, it was through resilience, reflection, and profound connections that they had conquered their pasts together. Now, as they moved toward a brighter horizon, Jack embraced the call to action, determined to help others on their unique paths of self-discovery, strengthening the tides of change and illuminating futures that were previously shadowed. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support and not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can inspire real change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help these heartfelt messages reach those who need them the most. Comment your reactions and thoughts about this journey to encourage further dialogue. And please share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and become part of a movement towards understanding and compassion. Don't wait even one more second. Your participation is crucial to the growth of our shared journey.